Hey, what's happening? Before we jump into the show, I wanted to see if you had any music on a hard drive. You have a band, you have a project, and you want to self-release your own music. Well, there's an easy way to do it. You can go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and go get your music up on all the streamers. You keep 100% of your royalties, and you can get 30% off by using this code. It's a great, easy way to get your music up on the streamers and share it with your fans, your friends, your family, your mom, your dog, everybody. Everyone wants to hear it. But go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate, HYPHENATE, and send me the link. I want to hear it too. Send your mom the link. Send your dog the link. They all want to hear it too. We'd like to thank our sponsor, iZotope, the absolute leaders in intuitively designed plugins for audio restoration, mixing, and mastering. At iZotope.com, you'll find a plethora of tools and suites that will enhance your audio production, whether it's voice, video, podcast, or a full production recording session. Check out the industry-standard audio repair tool, RX11, or the multi-tool mixer plugin, Neutron 5, or the powerful Ozone 11 mastering suite, plus tons more. Go to iZotope.com and use the code FRET10 at checkout for 10% off. That's FRET10 to get 10% off at checkout. And again, the website is iZotope.com, IZOTOPE.com.
When we were younger, you make music, it's like, this is a song, blah, like here it is, like outpouring of emotion. And I think now it's more of like well, what is this doing? How is somebody else hearing this? Like, why exactly am I doing it? All these kind of maybe existential questions that you're asking. I feel like those, at least in my experience, start to enrich the experience of doing these projects.
What's happening? Thank you so much for tuning in to Hyphenate Halftime. No, this is not a Hyphenate Halftime. This is a Hyphenate Regular Time. The Halftime is the show I do every Monday with Aaron Farley. This is the just regular Hyphenate show where I interview people on Thursdays. And today is May 26th, and I'm very excited to welcome an old friend, Mr. Jeff Byron of the Mae Shi and several other bands to the podcast. He has a new project called Hlll YH. It's spelled Hlll YH. You can find them on Instagram at HLLLYH_. They have shows coming up in Los Angeles on August 8th at Permanent Records, and then on August 9th at The Smell. Jeff talks about this new project that features all the members, or former members, or many former members of the Mae Shi. The Mae Shi were an awesome band that started up before No Age, and Dean and I were in a band before we started No Age, and we played with the Mae Shi several times. And we're really just part of the same community, part of the Smell and kind of the LA underground of the early aughts. And it was fun to get to catch up with Jeff. I had not talked to him in several years. So this was a great chance to catch up. I mean, you'll hear us in a second. I want to check in, see how everybody's doing. I heard from an awesome band on Instagram also this week. I'll probably talk about it more on the halftime. But I wanted to shout out Fog Lamp Bay. They sent over a song, Standing on the Wing. Sounds awesome. Thank you so much, Fog Lamp, for reaching out. Super stoked. If you want me to hear music, send it to me. I'm on the Instagrams at Randy S. Randall. You can also email me and the podcast. It's hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com. And send me links to your bands. I want to hear what you're up to. I want to hear kind of music you're doing, what projects you're up to, what you're excited about. I just want to say hi. I'm out there. I'm around. I've been posting these funny AI videos that Riverside, which is the program I use to record a lot of these interviews, they offer this like visualizer filter thing, AI product, and oh my god, I laugh so hard. It's still just, The AI has not got it figured out yet, but it's amusing or depressing watching it figure it out. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but I feel like this AI thing is definitely around. It seems to be always on the verge of getting into something. I don't know. Go check out the Instagram if you don't see it. It's at Randiest Randall, and you can see some of the videos I post there. And I always put up the tile artwork for the show as well. And let your friends know if you're liking the show. Tell people it's a good show. Go check out some Mae Shi music. They are online. It's MAE space SHI. And then go listen to the new record by Hlll YH, featuring former members of the Mae Shi. You'll hear Jeff talk about how this project came about and why it's not called a Mae Shi record and why it's something different. But it's Hlll YH, Hlll YH. Put an underscore there on the old Instagrams. And go listen. They have a brand new record that's out now. It's been years in the making, I think almost over a decade. And yeah, it sounds awesome. So thanks, Jeff, for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Enjoy this interview. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on Hyphenate. How you doing, man?
I think I'm doing all right. I think I'm good. I mean, I'm good. I don't know the rest of the world. Well, I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's a bigger story. Today we're talking about Jeff. The world. Well, after this hour, we can talk about the world, but we're going to talk about you and how are you doing?
I'm doing good. You say that, but at the same time, I think I don't know who's going to listen to this in the future. I assume that somebody will.
I don't know who's going to listen to this now. But regardless of the future, I don't know who's listening to it as it goes up.
I love listening to interviews and podcasts of my heroes. But oftentimes what I don't hear them talk about, especially if it was in the distant past, is like the stuff that was going on at the time. Like you listen to like an interview with Pete Townsend in the 70s and you're like, only after the fact you realize, holy shit, there's like a whole economic crisis going on and nobody can get oil and they're going to go to war with Iran and stuff like that. So
sounds a lot like now. What do you mean? That sounds like today.
It sounds like today. And I thought maybe it's worth just mentioning some of the shit that's going on. Sure. I know you talk about this on your podcast, but the latest news is that, we might be entering this war and Pakistan has nukes and they might be entering the war. And there are masked stormtroopers in LA and all over California that are taking babies away from their mothers. And yeah, it's a crazy time.
Horrific. It's horrific. Yeah. Oh, I'm challenged with it constantly, in doing this kind of, audio format where, I feel like a lot of the stuff I listen to, I enjoy a little bit of reality, but in general, I'm usually trying to just disassociating, I have this kind of 80s sort of Peter Pan syndrome where I'm probably locked into that more than I am even on the news. So it's like, I get just enough to kind of get on the edge of the existential nihilism and then go, oh, okay, wait, hold on. I got to get back into there's something to keep me here today, if not my kids or some kind of just mundanity, laundry and cooking dinner that I'm just okay,
totally
I'm back let's listen to something funny.
I think that we kind of have to do that.
I don't know if that's right or wrong. I mean, I could be the most out of touch person in his 40s, but I don't know. It's just trying to get through the one day to the next,
No, I think you have to do that. I mean, I remember having that feeling in 2020, like during the year of the pandemic, which we are still recovering from right now. Anybody listening into the future, we're still recovering from that.
Yeah. Have you heard about razor blade throat COVID? This is the newest variant. It's like Pokemon. We've reached the Charizard phase of this now new COVID of razor blade throat.
Oh man. Well, what some people are probably not going to realize listening to this decades in the future, if anyone does, is that
you're too kind. You're too nice. Okay.
I mean, I don't know why people would be interested in listening to me. I mean, there are Randy Randall fans that will listen to everything that you do, I'm sure.
Well, yes, we all know that. That's a given.
I think many of us have already sort of started to forget that the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd were at the same time and all those protests. Mm-hmm. And I remember at that time, I had an album of music to release and I was thinking what an egotistical thing to do right now is to to like offer something to the world that says, hey, give me attention. And I talked to some artist friends, and they kind of reminded me that like we can't really stop creating, and it's probably the best thing for us to do is to continue to be creative and not stop the culture that we have. And so I think this podcast is good for that. You do talk about a lot of the issues, but yeah, we can get into, we're going to get in. You talk a lot about origin stories and like fun old, the Matt Kronk podcast that you did. I listened to it and I was like, I felt like I was in the room. I felt like I could chime in at any moment. Yeah. I was like, hey guys.
You've been in that room. I mean, that's the funniest part of this, I feel like I love hearing from friends, like, oh my God, I've had those same conversations, or I never knew that about this person. And it's like, I know we've all been in rooms for decades together talking and telling stories. But what I find is there's something refreshing about the artifice of a podcast where I'm allowed to ask questions I wouldn't normally ask in social settings. And I always say, my wife's great at asking me like, well, where did they go to school? Do they have a brother or sister? Do they do that? I'm like, I never ask those things.
That's true.
We talk about guitars. We talk about, whatever dumb tech stuff or things that are interesting to us, right? We're subject experts, but in terms of actually talking, and maybe that, I don't know if that's a men are from Mars, women are from Venus kind of vibe, or if that's just me in my own sort of corner of how I socialize. But anyway, the podcast is nice for that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I feel like this podcast is about hanging out with your friends. I mean, you had Marcus Savino, you had Maggie Vale, all of these people who are part of my life, and yeah, like I know Marcus really well, but I don't really know about his family or like. Oh my!
I think there's a lot more to that story too.
I know Matt Kronk really well. Yeah,
I think that there was a lot. There was about a whole other podcast right after the Marcus Savino one where he told the real stories about his dad. And I was like, oh my God, there's a movie or a whole other book or a world of stories there too. But I understood, some of it was for privacy's sake. But I was like, whoa, that is. But if you're curious, I would say call Marcus today and ask him about the more stories about his father, and he'll share them.
I should call Marcus more often. That's what
everybody should call their friends. I mean, that's the other thing too. I think we're probably around the same age.
That's why we have podcasts.
But it's if nothing else, I mean, this is the kind of official unofficial sort of hang and catch up. But I feel like there's this artificial feeling that the people or the people you grew up with, or the people you were friends with in your 20s and 30s, you're still friends, which you are, but Instagram and social media isn't real. You check in and you say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. You go, we're still connected, but there's I don't know, there's a greasy sort of shine to it that doesn't ever really feel like we're actually still in touch.
Yeah.
And that's, it's natural, I think, for people as they age, their social groups change and shift, but there's a lie of social media that says, we're still in touch all the time. I follow you, that's because, but it's what it becomes is like, oh yeah, I follow you. I see what you're up to all the time, or I see what you want to tell me that you're doing when you feel like saying that's what you did. But it's like, you're not really in touch, I guess. It's a weird false narrative, I think, for at least our generation. I mean, other generations might deal with it better or worse, but that's like one I'm noticing at this point.
Well, yeah, I think our generation, like our relationships were never based on social media, and a lot of relationships these days are. I'm a teacher. I have a lot of students that's how they interact with their friends. But for us, that was not what our friendships were about back then. I mean, how much time did you spend on MySpace? As friends.
Oh my God. I love it. I just posted I just posted an interview with Juan from Vagoda, and he was talking about, I have a little clip I just posted today.
Oh, I can't wait
how much he used MySpace to book shows in those early days. And I was like, oh, I didn't have that. I wasn't as much on the ball or as much of a hustler as that.
I could
see how that was it. Yeah, I can see how that worked. But let's start from the beginning. Let's
do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So, now the show begins.
Where did you come from? We've talked about Sunland a little bit in the past, but I want to know. Yeah,
I came from Sunland, man. That's where I was. I was born in the San Fernando Valley. I basically was a San Fernando Valley kid, but I was for the first decade of my life, I was in Sunland, Tahanga. I lived on right near Mount Gleason Junior High School.
Oh, yep. Yeah, I'm right. I'm very close. I'm right there by the Ralphs where Sunthrift used to be.
Yeah, and it was a really cool place to grow up, but it was also kind of frustrating because I took a bus to schools in deep into the valley. So like my school day was really long. We'd start at like 6 a.m. and then I'd get home at like 4:30 or 5.
Yeah. Whoa.
But yeah, no, Sunland. And then so Sunland, none of my school friends lived out that far. So that was kind of like, it was kind of a lonely place. It was kind of a lonely place to be a kid until I started to get to know the local kids. And then, yeah, no, but I loved it out there. It's still an awesome place. Every time I'm in Sunland, Tahunga, I'm like, I look at that mountain. I'm like, I grew up with that, like looking at me, just that huge hill that's right there.
Sure.
And like, something like that, you just, when you grow up with it, you don't realize it's there until you go back and see it. It's like,
it's so
you
funny.
live basically in the hills, the foothills.
Yeah. I grew up out in the Inland Empire, and we were really close to a train track. And every so often I'll be back out that way or visiting someone, and I'll hear the train horn kind of in the distance. And I was like, ooh, that was like that was so normal, like as a part of my like childhood, just sort of like tableau, like the sounds and the smells of growing up. You know what I mean? It's the little thing when I hear the kind of train, it sounds like such a cliched blues song or like a Nick Cave, lyric, but the train, that lonesome train whistle blowing out in the distance of rumbling through the industrial suburban parks of Inland Empire. It's just like, oh yeah, just know, that's the 7:00 train or whatever time it was. I don't remember what the time was, but just hearing those, like, oh yeah, I grew up with that sound all the time.
Yeah. Inland Empire, we actually have a lot of crossover in history. I feel like we had our metaverses like met up at a certain point where they were very, very close. Were you in Upland or Glendora?
Well, I grew up in Walnut, right next to like Diamond Bar in Pomona, but I spent time in Claremont going to Rhino. I spent time, going to shows in Pomona.
Because I graduated from Claremont High School. That's where like me playing in bands all started.
How'd you go from Sunland to Claremont?
Oh, it's a long, not very interesting story of moving and living with different parents and stuff like that.
One parent was in one place, one parent's in the other, and you were bouncing.
Yeah, I mean it overlaps with your story in kind of interesting ways, because I moved from the valley, or moved from Sunland to Canyon Country I went to Canyon High School for like
that's up where Dean's from, right? That's Santa Clarita.
That's where Dean's from, and I think that's where my sister met Dean. So like they knew each other before you and I did, and then I moved out and I lived in San Dimas. I went to San Dimas High School for like half a year. That
Wild
school
Stallions.
was terrible. Yeah.
Wild Stallions. It wasn't like Bill and Ted's.
That was the only thing. That was cool about San Dimas was like going to the school where Bill and Ted went. And then like that school was just kind of miserable. So then Claremont High School was a lot nicer experience. Open campus and
the skate park.
Yeah, the youth activity center, the Yak was where we played all our shows.
Oh, that's hilarious. I was on a youth advisory board in Walnut. Walnut's its own little like city municipality, and they had a youth advisory something. And my friends would tease me and call me the teen mayor. Because I was on some like official city board, but I kept pushing for a skate park. That's all I wanted. I was like, this is great. Yeah. Can we build a skate park? Like every session or whatever, every meeting, I'll just like, I'm just here for the skate park. This is what I'm trying to do. But we did a lot of this, but we toured the Yak in Claremont, and that seemed a lot cooler. It seemed like they were doing all the things that I wish we were doing.
Yeah. I was in a band called the Urban G.I. Joes. It was a hardcore punk band. So we've played with the same members from past bands. I don't know if you know that, but
no. You mean Jeremy from Wives was in Urban G.I. Joes?
Was in Urban G.I. Joes. I knew him as like a 13-year-old kid.
You're kidding?
Could just
I had
shred
no
on
idea.
drums. Oh yeah,
Lord.
no. The crazy thing about that story is like we like played a lot of shows. I think I remember playing with you guys like at a pizza place in Pomona with Mika Miko. Like
right.
Early on, we played so many shows with you guys. I didn't recognize Jeremy as the same person for like a year.
That's probably by design. I think he was outrunning the law in different forms and fashions.
Oh, was he? I mean,
well,
I don't know.
The guy was Me Too'd before Me Too'd was a thing. It was like he was accused of sexual assault in high school that we didn't know about till later. And then, I'll talk openly about all this stuff. It's horrible and a nightmare, but it was one of those things like being in a band with somebody who was accused of sexual assault. It was horrific and terrible. We didn't know what we were supposed to do. And obviously we talked to the victims, we talked to, and eventually it got to a point where, we're just like, okay, he had a lot of stories for it, but he was a very shifty, again, kind of greasy sort of person that he had an excuse for everything and changed. It seemed like he was a chameleon. Like obviously there's probably terrible biography in his life, that got him to this point. But regardless, he was a weird guy. He had his stories never stayed the same. Like you'd ask him about one thing and it was, I grew up here, but my dad was from here and I did this. And you're like, none of this fucking makes sense. He's like a chronic, like habitual liar. At least he was.
That's funny.
Because you were looking back, you're like, oh no. And then the worst part that bothered me, sorry, just on the Jeremy part of it, is he never paid for anything. Those kind of friends, you know what I mean? Or those, like when you're younger, you get looped into this stuff where like you go to pizza, like, oh, I'll get you next time. So I was like buying slices of pizza all the time. There's just this like, why are you even trying to? It was if nothing else, like of all the other horrible things he did, there was the personal sort of like just thing I remember even as a kid, like we're all broke, we're all working for minimum wage, and you're gonna like, try to hustle me for a slice of pizza. Anyway, sorry.
I don't know. I didn't know him that well. I knew like at the time he had this really like weird abusive stepfather or whatever who was just total asshole who
sounds about right.
Made our lives hell. But it was weird because we were playing with wives. I think we went to Olympia. We played like a festival type thing up there, like a big show.
Oh yeah.
We went up with Amps for Christ, and there I was like hanging out with Jeremy, and I like looked at him and I was like, "Hey, this is a really weird question, but did we play in a band together?"
Like you didn't know that it was him? Like, did he have a different name then, or what? How would you?
No, his name was the same. He looked at. I mean, he was like a 12 or 13-year-old kid when we were playing with him in high school.
And he never brought it up.
And now he's like 20, 23 or 24. He never brought it up to me.
I understand. Wow.
And I mean, it was a short period of time that we were playing together, but yeah, no, I mean, it was still kind of like, oh yeah, I do remember that. So I don't know if I don't know.
That's anyway, so strange. Yeah, so I saw somebody run, or a story had gone back to me and Dean that someone had run into him like at like some art handling or art installation job, and they're talking about music, and he kept bringing up like all these bands, and the guy was like, "Did you play in bands? Like you sound like you're a guy who played in all these bands. Like, did you ever go to the Smell or anything?" And then he just stopped showing up to work. Like the next day, he just wasn't there. Like after the guy talked to him about it, like it was just these things have dogged him, whatever.
Moving on
to New
from
York
that,
and all this stuff.
I did end up.
But we'll get updates. People write Dean and I on social media about him, and like I saw him here. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not like I'm not a parole officer. I'm not trying to look for the guy. Like,
I mean, it was a long time ago.
It's none of my business. You know what I mean? The man has to deal with whatever his life is. Yeah, but anyway, sorry. It's a funny one as it comes up. I'm always like, oh, it's such a bummer. But at the same time, I feel like it's not really my story to tell. And it's also, but I can only tell my side of it. You know what I mean? Where I was just, it's horrible. Yeah. And it's one of those things. Yeah. So it's funny as you bring it up. I'm like, oh, okay. Geez. It always feels like one of those things from the past. Like, wow.
Well, I mean, during that era, it was often really hard to find musicians to play with, especially really good drummers. So sometimes you end up playing with people that you otherwise wouldn't. I feel like it's a little bit easier to find music. I don't know if it's easier now or not. But yeah, I ended up in Claremont High School and played in like a few bands in high school. I played in one with my brother. My brother was at the Claremont colleges. He was at Claremont McKenna, and like I kind of like we would meet up on weekends, and we had a band called the Cutouts. That was kind of, I don't know. It was just an indie rock band. We were really into bands like Superchunk and like those North Carolina bands, or maybe we're into Pavement or something like that. Those 90s indie bands. And since my brother was at Claremont McKenna, I spent a lot of time at the Claremont colleges. So we were always like after school every single day, either on those campuses or down in front of Rhino Records. Those were very like
so cool. Yeah.
Special times in my life. The Folk Music Center. Yeah. I mean,
the pizza shop there on the corner, and Saka's moved over there. It's great falafel.
Yeah. I will never forget like the caravan of like friends that would leave school as soon as the bell rang, and then all walk down to Rhino and then hang out there for like 4 hours.
I'm sure the store people love that, with about 50 cents between everybody in your pocket. Yeah. Not buying anything.
I think Rhino actually didn't mind. It made it lively there. Like, what's going on? Oh, this is a cool record shop, which is what they wanted to be. I mean, it was fine. That's cool.
That's so funny.
But yeah, the Youth Activity Center, playing at those weird old venues, lots of house shows. I'm sure we went to some of the same house shows and stuff. And Didn't even know each other back then. Maybe I met you at some point in high school.
I wonder. Yeah. So I had an older brother, and then and I kind of hung out with, but he was like 11 years older, and so I was definitely the little kid, and so I kind of got baby brothered in to some shows and some things. There was that what was it called? The House of, or it was Cup of J was in Pomona. Remember that? That was
Cup of J,
spot,
I
like
remember,
on Temple,
like,
and then there was what was the one in Pomona? It was there was the coffee house, but with a K or like a H. It was like right on the corner where not Glasslands, was it
the Glass House? I remember.
House. Yeah,
I remember the Vault, and I remember.
The Vault.
I remember a place called the Alcove.
Okay.
And I remember
the Vault was like a 21 Over Club almost, though, right? It was like a bar, like inside of a bank, right there in
I
Old
think
Town
it
Pomona.
changed many times.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of those
So funny.
places, like a lot of those places, you play once and you never get invited back again. Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
That
sounds about right. That's funny. But what got you into music? How'd you first come to music?
Well, that's an even older story. I was born in 1980, so I was a kid in the 80s, and I had an older brother too, who's 3 years older than me, who I've already mentioned, Tim, who was a member of the Mae Shi, which is the band that probably has a little cameo in the movie that is about no age, right? We're in the background there somewhere.
Or vice versa. I think you guys might be you guys probably would have the movie. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I think we're all extras in the Ezra Buchla story. I think is probably what it would be. He'd probably be the first person to get a film made about himself, played by Timothée Chalamet.
Oh, that would be an interesting movie. So I had an older brother, and when I was growing up, we were raised by a single parent who worked a lot of the time, so we had babysitters who always wanted to watch MTV, and I remember that. Like my mom's way of like grabbing our attention, she would like sit us down in front of the TV and turn on MTV, and she would just be like, "Here, go play in front of MTV." That was a weird thing for a parent to do, but but we got into it. My brother and I, it became our little hobby. I was 6 years old when I first started buying records. The first record I ever bought was "Look What the Cat Dragged In" by Poison. Ooh. At the same time as "Bad Animals" by Heart. Those are the two records that I walked into Tower Records. I don't remember. I think it was like a Burbank Tower Records. I looked at all the records and I was like, I want the one that has the guys dressed up as women on the cover. And I love that song Alone by Heart. So I was like, these are the two records I'm buying. And then from there, it was just like, I got super into hair metal, party music.
Sure. That's what was on MTV at the time, right? That was pushed. That's what they were pushing. The product they needed to.
It made perfect sense to me. I mean, all those songs are so raunchy, but but being a 6-year-old and seeing all the neon colors and people jumping around and having fun, I'm like, I want that. That's my thing. But that was how I got into music. How I got into playing music was, I think it was in 5th or 6th grade when I finally started playing guitar. And my brother had started playing guitar maybe a couple of years before. And he was just like, "Jeff, this is easy. Here's how you read a chord chart. Go do it." And then from then on, it never really left my hands. I just played forever. That's how I got into music. And then, I got further and further into music. I never really thought music was going to be the thing that I did as a career, which it is now. I never thought that it would be. I always thought it would kind of be a hobby or thing. I guess as a kid, if you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I probably would have said something like rock star. That's what I wanted. I liked the idea of that.
That's hard. It's hard to tell your parents. Yeah.
I was a college prep kid. My parents didn't care, but I was college prep, and I thought, well, maybe I got to go into engineering or something. I felt, since I was from a relatively poor family, I thought, well, if I can get to college, then maybe I can make a better life for myself. So there was that part of my brain that was working at the same time as all I really want to do is play guitar and play in bands and play shows. And that's it. I just want to be in the practice space all the time or playing a show. I don't really care about anything else, really.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Stanford University.
Okay.
One of the things that really kind of pushed me was things were a little bleak when I was a kid. I lived with a single parent. I lived with my father in a little tiny apartment in high school. And I just thought like, well, if I can get into a good school, and like I didn't really want to go to college when I was it's not that I didn't want to go to college. I was already like, now there's been a lot of backlash against like, what is college for? Does everyone need to go to college? Why is that? Isn't it kind of a big grift? Back then I was kind of thinking like, I think I could probably have a pretty good life and not go to college. I was thinking that myself. But
did your parents go to college?
They did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
My dad went to Carnegie Mellon, and my mom went to Pitt, and then they both got graduate degrees and stuff like that later on. So it wasn't like I was from a family where, I guess it was sort of expected that I would go to college, but I don't know. I was rebellious as a teenager, and I thought I'm going to do something different. However, kind of like, this is like, kind of sounds like Good Will Hunting or something. When I was in high school, when I was
you became a janitor.
Well, when I was in high school, I started taking all of these classes at the Claremont colleges, not because I wanted to be college prep, but because I just wanted to be in classrooms with people who were more excited to be there than in high school. And if I was going to be taking AP classes in high school to like take a test at the end to maybe get college credit, I just thought like, well, they charge me $50 to take a class at CMC in Pomona. Why don't I just go take that? I'll pay the $50. I'll get the credit, whether I get an A or a B or a C. It just made sense to me. And one of my teachers at Claremont McKenna did his undergrad at Stanford. So he was like, when he asked me where I was applying to colleges, I was like, oh, I better say something here. And I just blurted out Stanford. And he was like, oh, well, I'll write you a recommendation. I was like, oh shit, I guess I'm applying to Stanford. And then after that, I did kind of pretty much everything I could to get in. And that's where I went. And then I was there, I was super grateful. I kind of got weeded out of the electrical engineering program, kind of tried to do creative writing or something. But there was a department there called the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics. And as soon as I heard that thing existed, I was like, I'm going to be there all the time, because computer science and music, that's what I'm going to be doing my entire 4 years here. I know it. And then I went up there, introduced myself to like the guy who ran the recording studio. And I was like, hey, can I be your assistant? And he was like, well, I guess so. And then from then on, I was in a recording studio for 4 years, basically. That was college for me, was learning music production. Before music production schools existed, I mean, I was learning it on my own. There weren't any music production classes there. It was all very academic at Stanford. There was some playful creativity to the stuff that they were doing, like experiments on like how people's brains react to classic rock or something like, like people doing science experiments. I spent most of my time making weird experimental music and recording my rock band in college. That's what I did.
But it was like a recording, like you were learning like Pro Tools and like microphones and speakers and how to capture sounds.
I mean, I was learning that kind of on my own there. Oh. Stanford is a weird school where like, yeah, they have classes where they teach you things, but they kind of expect you to do a lot of the work. They expect you to like find your own research projects and link up with the right students and do things.
Even in undergrad, that's part of the undergrad thing.
Well,
it's not just classes with A's
in the
and
90s, there Pro Tools was barely an industry standard in the 90s. So while I did teach it to myself in college, it wasn't something that they were teaching in classes there. There were no Pro Tools classes. I don't know if there is now, but there wasn't. There was no studio class. There was no microphone class, nothing like that.
I see.
There was no music production classes. All the classes were on the science of sound or physics or maybe on human-computer interaction, computer programming for music composers. It was a lot of stuff like that. It was a lot of like experimental music composers using MATLAB to make their weird bleepy bloopy stuff.
Lord.
It was a lot of Ezra Buchlas, basically. He might be offended that I said that. I mean, they did. Well, they revered his dad.
His dad created like one of the pioneered synthesizers, right, of the time. I don't even know that much about it, but I know
his dad was like a god there.
He's like a nerd thing. Okay, yeah.
And in fact, so I met Ezra in high school. This is kind of interesting because it's part of the Mae Shi story and what I hope to talk a little bit about, which is the new album coming out. But
sure.
But I met Ezra in high school. He showed up at Claremont High School in the middle of the semester, and like I immediately was like, okay, we're going to be friends. I think we just had some inside jokes immediately. His mom she was a math professor at Pomona, and she did her graduate degree at Stanford. And she knew people in the orchestra, and I was playing bass in the Claremont High School Orchestra at that time. And so they needed bass players. So that was just another thing of the universe saying, hey, here's another connection to Stanford. And like, so yeah, I went up there, and the computer music department, they were like, oh yeah, we've known Ezra since he was like 3 years old. Like they knew him. Like, so yeah, it was just really special.
So is that kind of world of stuff of high concept music, synthesis, production, computers stuff,
yes,
but which isn't necessarily functional or profitable for a young musician. But trying to record his own band, it doesn't actually help in any way.
No.
Like, here's the cheaper version of a capsule mic or something you could get.
It's so funny. I went to a show once with my brother, like after he had kids, when we were full grown adults, and we were like just looking at how hard it was to set up all the instruments. And my brother said, yeah, being in a band is hard. It takes a bunch of skills they don't teach you in school. And I was like, damn right. There's so many people who do this thing and nobody teaches it to us. And college was kind of like that. It was like, okay, there's this super academic stuff. I'm going to be in the basement teaching myself how to use Pro Tools and learning about acoustics and how to mic up a drum set. That's kind of what I was doing there. And a lot of the academic people at Stanford didn't take me seriously. I just thought I was some rocker in the basement causing trouble.
Sure. How fun. Did you like living up there though?
I did. I mean, Stanford's
like near San Jose, right? It's just below the Bay Area.
Yeah, it's basically Silicon Valley now. It's in Palo Alto. It's about 45 minutes from San Francisco. I have always loved the Bay Area, and it was great. I loved it. One thing when we talk about, memories and the things that were our sort of fondest memories, of course, there's a lot of pain. There's a thread of pain throughout everything. And, being in college all of us were volatile young people. So I remember it as being a really, really awesome time in my life. But at the same time, there was a lot of personal things going on too anyway, that's just something that I realize as we reminisce about these memories. I feel like there's wonderful memories and there's some things that are super painful, and I'm totally down to talk about both of them. So.
Well, it's whatever you want. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, this isn't Mark Maron. I'm not trying to get anybody to cry. Well,
let's cry. Let's cry today. Let's do it.
We can do it too. Yeah, it happens. No, I mean, it's interesting though, right? I mean, because that's life. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Yeah, my parents.
That is life.
My parents split up when I was my first year in college. My parents didn't go to college, and so there was a precedent. Like I had to be the first Randall to go to college, and so it was forced upon. And so I was like, okay, sure, I guess I can do that. And then within like not even 6 months, they had split up and were making plans to live in other parts of the world. My mom moved to Hawaii, and my dad moved to Mexico. So within that first year of me moving out of the house and being on my own, for the first day, I remember wanting to come home and do laundry, or that kind of feeling of like, I can go home and, sort of check in, see the old house and everything. I was like, oh shit, that shit's gone. It's over. Like whatever that time of my life was, was no longer, which is, for the better or worse, whatever it was, that was their own life to live. But for me, I remember so then I'd go to my best friend's house and we would just drink beers and skateboard in his garage, even though I was living in Hollywood, going to USC and all this stuff. When I was 18, I was like, I don't fit in. I can't fit in on Melrose Avenue, you know what I mean? Or whatever, I didn't have a crew of people. So I'd still drive all the way back to the suburbs and get Papa John's, and I had a fake ID and get a 6-pack of Coronas. Yeah. And just pass out on his couch, because that was fun. Because it was still what I needed to do. You know what I mean? So all of those things, I feel like it's a lot of that time, right? Of, trying to figure out who you are on your own and outside of whatever family, dynamics or lack thereof, and put yourself to build your own brain and parent yourself in other ways that maybe didn't happen.
Yeah. Playing music and playing in bands and touring and crappy little vans, it really is a weird way of dealing with your emotions.
Sure. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, those long drives, 8-hour drives with the same group of dysfunctional people that you all gravitated towards each other for one reason or another. And you start to tell the stories about dads and you go, oh shit, we're all fucked up. All our dads were fucked up. I think Dean had a song in Wives called All Dads Are Alike, or All Dads Alike or something. It was a funny, but again, they're not funny, but it was one of those moments that I think as a young person, you would get to that spot. You're like, oh, okay, this is not only were we at all the same shows. Now it's like a funneling kind of like sales funnel sort of prospect. Like, okay, you guys are all weirdos and you're geographically located. Now you're going to end up at the same shows, attending to see the band that you all like. Now you're going to play the same music together. And now you're going to end up in this van in Des Moines, driving through Nebraska. You're like, oh, totally. They're going to tell those same stories. Like, that's fucked up. That's what my dad did. That's what my dad did.
Yeah, and I played in a band with my brother, so we had similar things going on. And like both my brother and I, we basically ran away from home. Like I eventually ended up living with Ezra's family in high school for a while. Oh, but like we all kind of had to deal with it. And we all kind of left home at different times when we were way too young. Like I have nephews and nieces, and like I can't imagine them at like 13 years old like leaving home to go live with another family. Like yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it happens. Well, but even with among siblings, like, I think about, I talk about that with my brother and with my wife and her sister and families and stuff. You realize like, even just because you're in the same family doesn't mean you experience the same childhood or even the same events. You know what I mean? From the same way, as you get older, you talk to your siblings and you're like, this is how this was. And they're like, no, it was like this. And you're like, wait,
totally.
We were in the same place, but the difference of 3 years or the difference of whatever information they knew that you didn't know, or you knew that they didn't know. I mean, the way a family dynamic works sometimes is, amongst children is they don't have the same parents. Even if they have the same parents, their life experience can be so tragically different. And you have to kind of heal that in some ways as an adult, sometimes with your siblings, if you want to have that relationship and go understand, like, instead of fighting each other and saying how wrong the other one was because they had it worse or you had it worse or who had it better, and jealousies and resentments and all these things you do, right? And then you kind of get into it. You're like, oh wait, here's what we can do. You can put that stuff behind you, or we can like, but again, you have to respect that we had different lives, or you lived a different reality, even if you're under the same roof, which can be so it's in magical thinking, right? Like, doesn't even make sense. Like, how could we be growing children of the same parents and have such different experiences? But I think it happens all the fucking time.
I'm sure
it's really common.
In our situation, like our parents split up, and my brother went to live with my dad while I live with my mom. So we actually had very different. Yeah, we had very different, and we have different memories of what our parents are like and everything. Totally, sure. Yeah, absolutely. My brother and I didn't actually kind of really meet up and become friends again until I somehow weirdly ended up in Claremont, and he was at the Claremont colleges. And that's when we were like, we're brothers again. So
yeah, I think it's not really talked about, or I don't hear people talking about it, or maybe I'm not looking for it, but you know what I mean? But that feeling of like, I had my oldest brother passed away when I was 12, and he was 25. And it really ripped our family apart in such an interesting way that like, I remember even like, by the end of high school, understanding, like,
I can't think of anything worse than that.
It was horrendous, and for everybody, and that's the thing. I was like, everybody hurt in so many different ways, but the key word there is different. And I think we weren't necessarily always there for each other because we all experienced a different loss. None of us lost the same person, I guess is what I mean to say. In that, what I mean? Someone like that, like my mom lost her son. My dad lost his stepson. My brother lost his older brother. I lost this heroic person of all these different ways. What I mean? So we all lost, which is again, just interesting dynamics within those family sort of tragedies. And I remember like thinking the metaphor I had for it somewhere, probably inelegant, but was like, like a Rashomon sort of effect where, you see a car accident, but from 4 different corners, and everybody could have seen a different thing and experienced something very different. But again, part of that is like, okay, once we understand that, you still have to show up for the other people, even though it wasn't, things weren't one-to-one ported over, you're still, we can have the general empathy. Like, okay,
it takes a certain
everybody's hurting. We're all hurting here. Yeah.
It takes a certain amount of maturity to like, to be able to realize that there are those 4 or more different perspectives going on too. Right. Especially when you're younger, you just, everything is so self-centered, and that's just the way it is. But
it's part of that, coping mechanisms, and I know we're both in sober places in our lives, and I think a lot of that, there's a lot of great language, through sobriety that can help, that can help sort of find some peace and healing and that sort of stuff, or ways of like, putting away the wreckage of your past and moving forward. Those types of words, you're like, oh, okay. All right. I can pick up what you're putting down there. This makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
But that's also the great part where you realize like, we're not so, I remember one of the funny things was like, one of the great phrases of early sobriety for me was, no, what was, I'm missing, it's been so many years now, but it was like, I want to say like tragically unique, or no, fatalistically unique. Somehow like you were going to die. You were so unique, you were going to die. What is that word? But anyway, but it was just, you know what I mean? Like
sounds about right.
All these little snowflakes who were just couldn't see the other, their similarities to all the other snowflakes in the world, you know, in terms of their fragility, and were just destined to melt rather than try to find a way to survive and fight for themselves in survival. And I was like, oh God, okay. Yeah. That's a lot of that early sobriety time.
That's cool. It's cool. It's good to hear that you're still sober. That's awesome.
Oh, okay. Or you're not? Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
No, I am.
Like.
Okay. 16 years this year. So yeah, totally.
Hey, congratulations. Yeah. That's a good stuff. Okay. So from Claremont, Stanford, and then let's get back into the biography. Where do you go? Music takes off Los Angeles?
Well, I was going to stay at Stanford. I was going to stay in the Bay Area. And it was actually my brother who was like kind of sparking up some musical thing with Ezra in LA. My brother lived in Koreatown, and Ezra was in LA too. And my brother was like, Jeff, come back to LA. We'll start a band with Ezra. You can live in my closet. Like, I've got a little room in my apartment. You can live there. Rent will be cheap. I'll even try to hook you up with a job. And so I couldn't really pass up on that. My brother had spent some time working in a recording studio with the Dust Brothers, the guys who did like the Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique, and like they did the Fight Club soundtrack. Relatively influential producers at the time in the 90s. Sure. But my brother had were they
the boat guys?
They were the boat guys. Yes. So my brother was at the boat. And, so it was a really, really terrible job, but my brother like basically connected me with John King of the Dust Brothers. And so I,
this is like Paul's Boutique, Odelay. This was all that stuff they did, right?
Paul's Boutique, Odelay. They did Odelay, they did a couple other Beck albums. Okay. But anyway, it was kind of like, it was right when, and this is also a kind of a little bit of a perspective, it was right when the .com bubble had burst.
Oh, right.
So like everybody who was in college at that time, especially at Stanford, was thinking, oh yeah, we're going to have great jobs. Like
that's that Silicon Valley sort of early tech, web 1.0.
Everybody's going to get a job working as a web designer. Everyone's going to get a job. Like, don't worry about it. And all of a sudden, boom. Everything is gone. And not only is everything in the tech world gone, but like all the recording studios that had like investment money in them, they were gone too. So the Dust Brothers were really not their peak was kind of over, I guess. Mm-hmm. No disrespect to John King or anyone that I worked with at the time, but like there wasn't a whole lot to do there. So that job was, I came back to LA and I started working for John King as his like assistant producer, but it was a lot of like making coffee, taking out the trash, and like organize my record collection by value of the record. And you have to look up the value. It was like a bunch of really stupid stuff I was doing.
But he was paying you for this. He had enough money to pay you for this.
It was one of the, have you ever had a job where you're like not sure if you're going to get paid? You know, like where you're like, you have to like knock on the door and be like, it's Friday. Can I get a paycheck for the last 3 weeks, please?
It's not good.
And it was kind of like that. And, so, I mean, but the most miserable thing about that job, it was just so lonely there. I basically worked at his house or at his studio with no other people. And even
it's hard at that age. That sounds like a great job for me now. I would love that in my 40s. Like, oh yeah, I don't have to work with anybody. That sounds fucking awesome. But at the time, in your early 20s, I was
22 years old.
That's the worst. Yeah.
And we would sometimes work with artists, and like I would kind of do this like take me with you, that sort of thing. And finally, I was just so fed up with it that I was just like, I can't do this anymore, and I basically begged the operations manager at the LA Film School on Sunset and Ivar. Okay. I was like, hire me. I'll fix your lights and audio equipment. As I had a little bit of a technical background, I'll work in your equipment room. Just give me a job. I don't want to work.
Is that the one that was across the street from Amoeba?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So like pretty quickly after that, I started working at the LA Film School as kind of like a equipment room technician kind of person, helping people like figure out how to fix the editing rooms and things like that. And that was a great job because I was surrounded by tons of people and a lot of people my age, and they were all creative and most of them were really interesting. And that was that during that sort of first year that I was back in LA, that's when the Mae Shi really started to get going. That's when we kind of started we did our first EP, and we started playing with Brad Breek.
Oh,
And
he was the
then
drummer, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we the you know, it's kind of hazy on some of the details of those early years just because there was so much going on for me. But that when we started out playing with a different drummer, and Brad kind of came in, maybe, you know, it's weird because it seemed like we had a little era where there was no Brad, but it was probably like 4 months. It was probably like 6 months or something like that. When Brad came into the band, it was like, okay, yeah, this is it. Like, we figured like something is working here. Let's start playing shows immediately. That kind of thing. Brad kind of brought this like extremely talented wild card energy to the band that it was, which was me, Tim Byron, and Ezra Buchla.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then from it was probably a very, very short time between when Brad started like joining us in the practice space to when we started playing shows and even touring. So we probably did our first tour in 2003 or 2004. And we were playing shows with the Wives.
Yeah.
I still have my Wives. I still have my purple Wives shirt, by the way. Yes.
Oh, is that with like the teeth?
No, it's
the
one
teeth
with
one was
Wives.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Dean's
in bad
mom
shape.
Had a silk screen shop, so he knew about silk screening and could make shirts easily.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. It was a wild time. I mean, that was sort of the smell, Hlll Corral, and
it's funny. In your interview, in your talk with Matt Kronk.
Oh yeah.
That was a funny interview. You guys talked for like 15 minutes about Prince. And I was like, where is this going?
He's from Minnesota. Yeah,
I know. It makes perfect sense. But
I had no idea he had so much background. He was like worked at Paisley Park. Like, that's insane. I did not know that.
Yeah.
It never came up in our conversations while we were talking shit about everything else in the world. I never knew that.
I got to hear your Prince stories, which was fun. But then Matt says something. He says, we just toured with the Melvins. And then he says, and it reminded me that there's like they were so nice to us. And it reminded me that there's a way to do this where everybody wins. And I feel like, when you talk about those Days of the Smell and Hlll Corral and stuff like that, I feel like up until that point in my life, I felt like a performing band had to always have some sort of intimidating thing about them, a separation from the audience. Oh my God, they're so impressive on stage, the lights, the sounds, the big things. And I feel like that era kind of broke that wall and made it so much more of a, like, it was just much more of a party at every show. And those venues, that like those bands in those venues it was community. That's exactly what it was, rather than this is a thing where you're going to go and stand in this room and pay attention to this one thing that's happening. It was kind of like this more like I don't know, at least in the Mae Shi, we actively tried to get the entire room involved in the show somehow or whatever. And I thought that was really, really cool. And I've seen that approach to community in music and venues and artists kind of come and go. Like, it's not something that just stuck around forever. But anyway, that's one of the things that I really remember about that era, was just how kind of, it wasn't like positive in like a nauseating way or anything. I mean, it could have been
sweet. Sure.
I mean, maybe some people thought it was, but
yeah. Well, I remember going to the Smell when it was in North Hollywood when I was in high school to see Watt do like a solo bass thing, and I remember reading about it in like the LA calendar section. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was
right next to the Raven. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it wasn't like I was cool or knew about the underground. I was reading it in the newspaper, because I was a nerd, and being like, oh, I know Mike Watt. Okay, yeah, let's go. I saw him at Lollapalooza. I would like to go see more. He did the Ball Hog and Tugboat record, and and he crossed over into the mainstream, MTV-ness of it all. And so I remember going there, and literally, like, there was no stage. Like, here was the guy that I saw at the side stage of Lollapalooza and on MTV with Eddie Vedder, and you know what I mean. And it was
mind blowing.
He's just here on the floor wearing a weird Hawaiian shirt with chili peppers on it and like flip flops, and
it was awesome, right?
This was great, yeah. And then he spent 2 hours in the parking lot talking to everybody in the parking lot, and it was that feeling like, oh, I see, I can do this. Like, that was my first sort of like permission into a world. and that's how I definitely just took the smell as that sort of access point of like, everybody can do this. And I always, but in the same way, I always thought the audience was like, everybody that's coming to these shows is in bands too. Like everybody's either starting bands or if you're not on stage, you're watching your friends on stage. Like anybody, at any moment, anybody could be the person playing music. And I loved that about it.
Yeah.
It felt very open. Not that it was, but it wasn't so like community. It wasn't the Yak where it was like, okay, this is open mic night. Everybody get up and say your shitty like poem and play a tambourine. Like there had to be some unofficial vetting of it in one form or another. Not that all the bands were good, but somehow it was just formal enough, yet still dangerous and sort of MacGyvered together with tinfoil and meth heads in the alley to guys like, okay, this is just dangerous enough, but still just kind of works. It's interesting balance.
I never really liked big concerts. I still don't to this day. And because when I was a teenager, we were going to the Jabberjaw, we were going to the PCH Club, we were going to the Huntington Beach Library. These are all real DIY venues, pretty much. The Jabberjaw is probably like, it's probably iconic at this point, but like, and it was technically a coffee shop, I guess. I don't know. It was a DIY venue. It was totally a DIY venue. I remember when I think I was 13 years old, the first like concert, the first show I ever went to was a Sugar concert. It was Bob Mould's band. And it was funny because when I was 13, I didn't even know who Husker Du was. I just liked the album Copper Blue. I just loved that album.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And it was at the Palladium, and it was like kind of big. And I was kind of thinking like,
that's where I had my first show too. Yeah.
And like, I didn't love the show. I mean, I liked Bob Mould. I liked the songs, but Bob Mould.
Did that have See a Little Light? Did they have that song on there?
I don't even remember the song titles. Okay. It was right. Okay. It was right when File Under Easy Listening came out. I was a big fan of Sugar. Anyway, that's cool. I didn't even really know who Husker Du was at the time. Like I kind of knew that Bob Mould had an earlier band, but those Sugar albums are really kind of
so stoked to hear this part. We have to clip this and just send this to Bob. Like I didn't know who Husker Du was. I just loved Copper Blue. Like
yes. I mean Copper Blue and that those albums were so like. I want to say overproduced, but I'm going to say well produced. There's like tripled vocals and like electric 12-string guitars and keyboards, everything. You go to see them play, and it's three guys on stage, and Bob Mould can only scream. I was like, what is this? This is weird. I don't know if I like this. And like the crowd was huge. It was totally sold out. And I remember thinking like, I don't know. There was just something that kind of like stuck with me. I was like, so that's what a concert is. Like, and so. When
That's
I started
what a Bob Mould concert is.
Yeah. Well, it was what a show at the Palladium.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Was like, and
were you up on the balcony?
No, I was on the floor. I was like near the mosh pit too.
I remember my brothers kept me on the balcony, but it was also where all like the weed smoke collected, because I think people were smoking weed in those days inside. And so I remember just getting a contact high at like 12 years old or something, or 11 years old.
I'm pretty much sure that's probably one of the things that maybe not like the show that much. Is I probably got high there. But I went to Lollapalooza like the year before, the one with like Smashing Pumpkins and stuff. Like,
okay. The Beastie Boys.
And like I was in awe of it, but I did not love it. I was like, this is kind of weird. Like,
Meadows?
I think probably. I remember loving watching the Breeders, and I loved watching the Beastie Boys. That was I was blissed out watching those two bands at Lollapalooza. And like after that, I was like, okay, I want to go home. But
you're locked into the festival setting.
But yeah, no, like going to the Huntington Beach Library. I don't know if you ever went there, but it was literally a library. You go into the library, there's books everywhere, and then here Jimmy Eat World is playing on the floor in front of you, right? That's incredible. I was like, these are the venues that I want to play. This is it. The PCH Club was in like a little tiny storage warehouse space down near like an oil refinery off the PCH.
And I never went there either. I know Alex now.
It was terrible
for years, and I don't know.
Terrible. But
we played Alex's backyard in that band. I was with Jeremy before Wives. It's called The Count. We played Alex's backyard, but PCH had already been over by then.
PCH was legendary. Terrible, but I saw Modest Mouse play a 45-minute set there, and I saw Unwound play there. Yeah, no, like those, like just, I mean, that just changed me forever. Those shows. Jabberjaw is such a weird place where you enter through the back of the stage. Had you ever been to the Jabberjaw?
I did. Yeah, okay. I got little brothered into that. Like I would not have known about it on my own, but I was able to tag along and not be annoying for enough minutes to talk my way into the car and go. But,
It's so weird to think that like as like 15-year-old kids, we were like driving ourselves into like South Central LA, or basically one of like the creepiest
Pico
parts of
Union,
LA,
yeah.
Pico Union, to go to a show. I can't. I don't think I don't. Yeah, my.
But it was all part
my
of the
15-year-old
experience.
nephew. Yeah,
It was all part of the
I
experience.
just can't imagine
That's how
kids
it
doing
goes.
that these days, but maybe they do. I mean, the smell was the same thing. I felt it was like
super sketchy.
like totally sketchy, and it was kind of like a little haven where we had to like watch out for like the people hanging out around there, and like, yeah.
Yeah, yep. I've taken my 11-year-old son a few times to the smell, and and I just love experiencing it through his eyes. Like, Dad, that's not dog shit in the alley, right? I'm like, oh no, it's not. That is human. That's human feces, pal. Yep, right there. There it is.
What's that like? What's that like seeing the smell through your kids' eyes?
It's exciting. It's exciting. I mean, obviously,
is he interested in it? Like
he likes to volunteer for the snack bar because he gets tipped out at the end. Jim has like a little like Godzilla thing with like a tip cup taped to it, and so people will put dollars in that. And so he's figured out that this is kind of his like side hustle to it all. And I've not. I mean, we were kind of saying that he didn't know what to do. I don't think he understood like the band, or he wasn't locked in. But I was like, buddy, you could volunteer. You could go like help stamp hands, or you could go, just ask Jim what he needs help with. And Jim said he could do the snack bar.
He's going to brag about it when he's older. He's going to brag about it when he's older. Yeah, I worked the snack bar at the Smell.
maybe. Who knows, right? I mean, if it has anything to do, I'm sure like he'll probably not talk about it for years. And then one time it'll come up and be like, oh, wait, well, my dad had something to do with, he took me to some weird club downtown. Like, I don't know. My dad played in a band or whatever. I don't know. He'll like probably not. And then maybe, in his 30s, he'll finally go, oh, actually it was kind of cool. Like I'm sure he'll deny it for years when he's doing something completely different and deny I was ever part of his life. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. A lot of my students are, in their early 20s. I don't have any students that are like teenagers or preteens at all, but like, I do sort of realize that the art, the genre that, I guess not the genre, the thing that we were doing, making music, playing shows, hanging out at the Smell, is really like, I kind of wonder if it is like kind of a pastime, because it's a relatively unusual thing to do, to get together a few people, spend time in a recording studio, making a record, play shows, and go on tour. And you're expected to do all of those things. Like, it's not like you can just like make records and be a band. Not in 2004 or whatever. Like, you had to go on tour, you had to put out records, you had to record. Yeah, like all of this stuff was expected when you are a band. And like,
I think it's even harder now. And I mean, now you have to have a degree in computer programming and AI prompt making, and
maybe you're right,
and have a choreography degree and come up with your own dance moves for TikTok. And then you got to create your own, you're basically your own like ad agency on top of being a band. You have to create a whole media kit for yourself, which we had t-shirts and maybe a zine, but we didn't have an electronic media kit.
What we were
things. Dance routines.
No, but it was just a different media kit. We just had to do different things back then.
I guess.
We had to think about it in different ways. I mean, I have a niece who is 21 and she's playing in a band. And like, part of me, I think that she probably realizes that it's kind of a retro thing to do for her to like do this. Like, I think she's probably aware of that. But I don't know. I don't know if it's one of these things, because it is relatively weird. If you look at the history of people making music, this thing of like, we're going to get 3 or 4 people in a practice space, and we're going to play songs and then record them and then make a record and then go on tour. And like, we're going to make no money doing that. Yeah. Like, it's pretty weird. Like, it's art. It's a very specific type of art, I guess I would say, that has these specific facets. I mean, it's not like, if you're like, I guess a lot of artists have different ways that they have to release their stuff. But if you're a painter, you're painting pictures and you get them into a gallery or you sell them or whatever. And that's kind of it. You don't have to like then make music for the art. And then, maybe you go on tour. I don't know. I just felt like it's a relatively weird, specific set of things that we were doing back then. And I don't know. It's
if it carries over. Yeah. I'm sure it's vastly different, but also not that different either. You know what I mean? I think there's still music still being made, obviously it's how it goes. Speaking of music being made, new music, tell me about this new project. I want to hear.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, yeah, I guess in order to get into this project, I probably should talk a little bit more about what the Mae Shi was, because
Sure.
I'm not sure your listeners
Oh, right,
may
right.
not know this, but like so it was Ezra Buchla, the son of Don Buchla, Brad Breek, me and Tim, and we put out a couple of albums and toured and did that whole thing. And in that time, the Mae Shi is a band that really there were a lot of people that made it happen. That's probably the way to
What
put
do you
it.
mean?
I mean that like it wasn't just 4 guys in the band. There were the 4 of us, and then eventually Corey Fogel came and played drums with us, and then Brad, and then Ezra decided that he wanted to do other things. He wanted to do different things creatively, and then Corey left. So there was a point in time where we had one drummer, then we had 2 drummers, then we had like
the rotating lineup. Right.
Yeah, but I don't like to call it lineup because I feel like the contributions were more valuable than just somebody who was just in the band. And so there was people know different iterations of our band who are fans of us. They might know the time when Ezra and Corey were in the band, or the time when John Gray came as like a second singer, and talking about the sort of ethos and the vibe of those venues and stuff like that. John Gray, when Ezra left the band and we kind of searched for a new singer, John Gray was one of the people who was in the front row of every show that we were playing. And we were like, this just makes sense to like have that guy be the singer in our band. So that's like how he joined. And then Brad kind of, he didn't want to tour anymore. That was his main thing, I think. He still wanted to be involved with making music and producing music. So Marcus Savino joined for a bit. Then Marcus Savino left, and we got Bill Gray and Jacob Cooper. So there were a lot of people who were involved in what the Mae Shi was. And it's kind of interesting, when we did one European tour, maybe I think it was one European tour with Ezra, and then all of our other European shows and tours were with John Gray. So there are people who know us in the UK who only know us as that later iteration of the band. I think it's super interesting, right? Like some people know us as that, and in the US we're like a completely different band. It's almost like there's like a when there's like a European version of the TV show, and then there's the American version. It's kind of like that. So getting to what this new project is, in 2009 we stopped playing as a band almost entirely. I had my own issues. I had to go get sober and deal with personal things and kind of deal with a lot of the pain that I was suffering through and causing to other people at that time. And so the other guys who were in the quote unquote touring version of the band, which was John Gray, Bill Gray, Jacob Cooper, and me. John Gray, Bill Gray, and Jacob Cooper went on to form the band Signals, which was a fantastic band, amazing band. I think they're super talented, and I love the stuff that they did. 13 years go by, and in that time, or I guess during that decade, I've been playing in other bands. I did Physical Forms, Turbo Lightning, just tons of other bands, and in the back of my mind, there was always this idea that the Mae Shi might get back together to make a record or do something. But as time went by, I was kind of like, yeah, it's probably less likely. Less likely as every year that goes by that does it. But I think it was in maybe 2.5 years ago, I was over at my brother's place for like the 4th of July, and he like says that he's got this wave of creative energy and that he wants to write. He's been writing these songs, and I'm like, are you talking about like trying to get the Mae Shi back together? Is that what you're talking about?
Like, I think you have to go see a doctor for that. I think there's a condition. There's a pill you can take to stop that from happening.
Yeah. And then he was like, well, yeah, kind of. That's kind of what I'm thinking of doing. I'm kind of want to reach out to the other guys and see if they want to do this. And I was like, I don't know if I'm because I was like thinking like, right, we're still like Black Lives Matter, COVID. Like I'm still like thinking of all this stuff that's going on in the world. Like, is this the right time for like 4 white dudes to get back together and make a record and say, listen to me? Is that the right time to be doing that? So I kind of had to like stew with that, but eventually like Tim sort of convinced me like, well, let's do this. Let's make it happen. And so we started working on these songs. We got Ezra to come back and sing on a few songs. Brad is involved. Corey plays drums on the album. So we spent the following 2 years or so working on this record, and I'm super proud of the way it came out. I love the record, and I'm super happy I was involved. The dream of getting the band back together was not exactly as we imagined it would be. It was actually full of lots of little difficult things. For one, like the John Gray wasn't really that interested, which was a real bummer. Like trying to get Brad involved was kind of difficult because he's a super successful music composer for Disney and Nickelodeon now. And like the idea of going back and being in a band with guys, like, no, he just didn't want to do that. Right. He was willing to contribute a little bit, but I don't think that was on his mind. He definitely did not want to be in a band. And then I think there was just the kind of stuff of like the last time that the 4 or 5 of us were making music together, we were in our volatile 20s. Right. And like, that's our memory of working together was kind of around that. So it was difficult. It was kind of hard to do. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. The album got finished. While we were making it, a lot of what we were thinking about was like, this is a Mae Shi album, and how do we make it sound more like that? We were kind of like doing that. Like, what would the Mae Shi do? What would the Ezra era Mae Shi do for this song? Which was kind of fun. It was kind of like doing a weird little puzzle. The album that we finished is so it's got all the original members on it. We're all singing songs on it. Voices are all over it. I would have to say that the concept itself, the album, the project is probably like 90% Tim's vision and Tim's work, really. Like he wrote all the lyrics most of the lyrics, 99% of the lyrics probably. He came up with a lot of the initial ideas for all of them. My role in this was basically to come in and be a producer for the album and like kind of throw my voice in there, play guitar on it, and make it what I think the Mae Shi sounded like. Kind of like that. It was kind of a fun project. But in the end, we shared it with friends and we shared it with, bandmates and stuff like that. And it doesn't really sound like the way a Mae Shi record sounded like. Like it doesn't sound like that in a way. I mean, it's got Ezra's voice on it. It's got my guitar on it. It's got Tim playing bass. It's got all the parts, but there's something that's very different about it. And in the end, I think the decision that was made was that this is going to be a different band. We're going to call this band Hlll Yeah, which was the last record that we put out. It's spelled Hlll YH. I like to pronounce it Hlll YH. That was my favorite. A fan once came to me and said, "Is it pronounced Hlll YH?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like Hlll YH."
Yeah, sure.
So now the performing band, the band that's moving forward and representing this record, is called Hlll Yeah or Hlll YH or Hallelujah. I don't know exactly how you pronounce it, but that is the band that's been playing shows and stuff like it. And I am not a part of that performing band, just because I really want to be in a touring band right now? Like, probably not. Got too much going on. And
so who plays in the band? But you produced the record, you played on the record, and now there's
so I sing, I play, I produce the record. But no, so it's Tim and it's 3 new musicians that I've actually only met once, but they're great guys. And so this is really kind of like Tim's vision and Tim's project. And that's cool. I mean, they're doing it. They're like, they open up for the Brainiac reunion show in the Bay Area. They've been playing shows around and they've been making it happen. And Tim's got like, it's kind of seemingly infinite creative energy to do this, which is, which is really cool. I think it was an interesting experience, and I'm like, I want to help. I definitely want people to hear it. I'm really, really proud of the record.
Is it coming out? Is it out now? What's
it comes out on the 27th of June. So
okay.
I don't know if this podcast will be published before then or not.
Right close to there. Yeah. It'll be close to
perfect.
It. Sure.
Yeah.
That is it. Okay. So wait,
it's on vinyl. It's going to be
you guys got together, recorded a record with the original version of the Mae Shi. Who's playing drums? Well,
so this is a very 2025 produced record because Brad is still in Los Angeles. Ezra is moving around all over the place. He's kind of really hard to pin down. So the making of this record was not, hey, the 4 of us got into a practice space, or the 5 of us got into a practice space and we made a record and then we went into a recording studio and recorded it. No, this was all done piecemeal.
Okay, so you guys were never in the room together. Maybe you and Tim were, but everyone else was
Tim and Ezra and I were often in the room together, but it would only be for like once a week. Ezra could really only show up for like once every 2 weeks to sing and like maybe throw his hat in.
Okay.
And like, you know, so yeah, it's kind of a weird, it's a very 21st century way to make a rock record. But
I'm just trying to, I'm just curious. So why wasn't it a Mae Shi record? Was there a feeling of like not trying to tarnish like what the legacy was of that, or what was that conversation like? Like, why was it seen as not an addendum to that? Like, because oftentimes, I mean, you look at this stuff and it's like, oh, well, there's a lawsuit or somebody owns the rights to that name, or this is this is not a This Heat record, or what was the band? You know what I mean? There's different versions of bands that have been the other version of the other band. And you always feel like, well, it's probably something legal happening there.
Well, I think to call back to something we talked about previously in this interview, in this talk here, is that like, I can really only give you my perspective on it.
I see.
My memory of what the band was and what it is today and things like that, or what this album means. I think if it were up to me, it probably would be released as a Mae Shi record. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like, the thought like this, I guess this was not the band reuniting. See, I kind of, when we first started doing this, my thought was like, oh, this will be the first record. This is kind of Tim's vision. Let's make it happen. This is great. And then like the next, I'm already thinking about the next record. I'm already thinking about the things we're going to do after that. And it started to become clear that that's probably not what's going to happen. Like that's, you know, it's really difficult. A collaboration is often very difficult, especially when it comes to like, you know, trying to collaborate with people that you haven't made music with in a really long time. And my brother and I are pretty close, but we're still brothers. There's still like sibling shit that's going on. There's all kinds of like weird passive aggressive stuff that happens. And like, I don't know, neither of us really have time for that bullshit, really.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think it just made sense for like, hey, if this is a Mae Shi album, that means there's all this stuff that we need to kind of do to like, I mean, like, think about it. If we released it as a Mae Shi record, we would kind of need, what would we do? Would we make it look like the band had gotten back together? Is that what we would do? And would the band be playing shows? And if they were, who would be in that performing band? There were all those kind of things that we would be thinking about if we were promoting it as that.
Right.
And like,
right.
Do we really want people to think of this as the Mae Shi reuniting on this record? And again, this is just kind of my perspective on it. I'm sure Tim would be a really good person for this podcast too.
Sure, yeah. But I guess, has there been like feedback from the fan side of the community? I mean, you guys were beloved the world over. Like, have people responded to you or pushed to been like, what is this? What's going on? Or has it been just sort of like, cool, we're stoked? Or how does it work? I don't know.
Well, so some people love the record. Like some of the people who have heard it. It's also weird because we're trying to kind of like tap into something that was very alive in 2005 that may not be so much alive anymore. You know,
it's probably alive. It's just tired. It just has a couple of kids and hangs out on the couch and watches game shows with their kids.
Maybe we're trying to reignite it or something. You know, it was like this sort of like the Mae Shi had a song. We've had a song that's been in a couple like movies and movie trailers. There was one animated film that came out a few years ago called The Mitchells versus the Machines.
Oh yeah, we've seen that a bunch. I didn't know.
And the first song in the film is a Mae Shi song. It just starts boom with a Mae Shi song, and
that's exciting.
The trailer has the Mae Shi song throughout it, and like, sure, that's cool. I love that. But what's really
dog bread, pig, loaf of bread, dog, pig, loaf of bread. That's what my kids would always say something. It was like the finale of the film. The Mitchells versus the Machines.
I only saw
about
it
a
once.
pug. Okay.
I only watched the part that had the Mae Shi in it.
I turned it
off. No, just kidding. No, it was actually a great movie. But
was the director a fan? Is that how it
I don't know how it happened, but the thing that was most surprising about it was not the fact that it happened. It was the fact that there were people on Twitter saying, I know this movie is going to be good because they put a Mae Shi song in it. And we were like, who the hell even knows who we are anymore? Like, how are we relevant to anyone? Like, it's been over a decade since we've done anything as the band. And so we were just kind of surprised that there were like people who like were like, oh yeah, this is great. I'm so excited to hear this song in a movie. And I think there's something that's like, oh wow, there actually still is a little bit of like love out there. And so, so when we started sharing the kind of mixed record with people, a lot of people really liked it. A lot of people were really excited. Of course, there are people who we knew who were really into music 20 years ago, and they're not so much anymore. And maybe they just don't really have the time. I mean, I don't know. It was, as with any record, trying to get your friends to listen to your music is always going to be hard sometimes. But yeah,
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, most of the people seem to really like it and are excited about it. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
That's awesome. Fun. Well, it's
Yeah.
exciting. Okay, cool. So it's coming out. Hell yeah. What's the title of the album?
It's called Uruburu.
Okay.
Uruburu. Uruburu. It's a kind of a play on the word Ouroboros, which is I believe it's Greek for the snake eating its own tail.
Mhm.
It started out, I mean, we could go on about this record. So originally it was going to be like 24 songs or something like that, like a double LP, huge concept album about the man's descent into chaos and the light at the end of the tunnel and all this stuff.
This is
And
Tim.
this is basically Tim's idea.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
And we had to really pare it down. We had to do this kind of like critical edit of the album. And then it kind of ended up being just like 12 or 13 songs. There are songs on the record that were written over 15 years ago. So it's not entirely 100% a new thing. There's songs that we
What was that like, going back to a song from 15 years ago?
I was great. I mean, I kind of wish that we had done it with more songs. Like there's one song that we had written as a band and never finished and never published. And that song is called Flex It Tagger. And it was kind of interesting because that song was originally, the conception of that song was in the later years of the Mae Shi, and Ezra is singing it on this record. So it's a weird kind of bridging this sort of gap. Wow. And then there's like the first single off the record was a song that Tim and I wrote in like 2010, I think. We wrote together. It was kind of after the Mae Shi like stopped playing. And like, I was just trying to figure out how to keep my brain active and do creative things. And Tim was like, let's write some songs. Maybe they'll be Mae Shi songs. Maybe they won't be. So one of those songs called Dead Clade, that's the first quote unquote single off the record. It's already out right now. That started back then. And then the album's got a lot of references to earlier songs and stuff. I mean, that's something that we as a band did all the time too, where we borrow a guitar riff from another Mae Shi song and throw it into this one. And so there's a lot of that throughout the record. There's a lot of Easter eggs. There's Easter eggs throughout the record. It's a really fun album to listen to if you're a Mae Shi fan, I think.
Awesome. That's super fun. And where do people do? Is there a social media presence, or how do people follow and keep an eye out for shows and for upcoming events and things? How can people keep in?
I think there's going to be some stuff on the Mae Shi social media, but you should follow Hlll YH. Search it up. I'm not sure if it's Hlll YH _ band or if it's just Hlll YH. Hell yeah, hallelujah. You have to spell it out in order for people to find it. But
okay.
Yeah, that's how people can listen to it.
Cool.
And it's gonna be interesting to see what people think about it. Like
on June 27th, it's everywhere.
It will be,
yes, in the world.
Yeah, the couple songs are already out. So Flex It Tagger, the one with Ezra singing like that. Ezra sings about 4 songs on the record. I think I sing 3, or I think 3 to 5, depending on if it's lead vocals or backing vocals. And then Tim sings.
Are you going to sit in on any shows? Do you have any?
I don't know.
To do that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like the way things kind of ended, I was kind of like, I gotta move on, sort of. I mean, that's the kind of the way I felt about it. Like I didn't want, like it was trying to like put myself back into this project was kind of difficult. So I haven't been involved with any of the live performance stuff. So far, their live shows that look really, really fun, but I haven't even seen them play yet. So, yeah,
cool. And then what about yourself? Are you making music? Are you playing live, or what are you doing for your music?
I am not performing live. I work as a music composer for TV and film and stuff like that. That's kind of what takes up most of my time. I also teach music production at the Academy of Art in San Francisco. I worked on a little ambient electronic project that was called Heartbeats for a while, another reference to a Mae Shi album. But that was something I worked on for a couple of years. But this year I don't have any plans to release any music and anything personal. I'm not playing any shows or playing in any bands. However, there has been this sort of like, I think maybe because it's like kind of the recovery from COVID, a lot of people are really starting to get more interested in live performances. I mean, even this summer, I'm going to like 4 shows, which is way more than I would usually go to. I don't go to shows every week. But you know, like going to see bands like Flaming Lips and Of Montreal and Spoon and the Pixies are playing. Like, there's been kind of a resurgence of live music. So it has been in the back of my mind that something might start up soon for me. I have been talking to other musicians. I between 2002 and 2005, I played in a band called LA Riots, and we were just basically a power pop band. We loved Elvis Costello and Squeeze and Split Ends and like that in my head has been always an unrealized project. And I'm like, it's never too late to start writing the 2.5 minute pop songs. And so something like that might be happening soon, but
awesome.
I
Cool.
figured
Okay.
I'd give it some space after this new album came out and see what happened. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I've been working on some film stuff. I do a lot of music and sound design for TV commercials and stuff. So I'm often trying to work on new experimental kind of sound design projects. That's one of my hobbies. And it's something I teach at the Academy. I teach experimental sound design and synthesis. So.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, one thing I don't hear enough about in your podcast is like what you've been doing, because it's usually always about the guest, but like, what is it that you're working on right now?
What am I doing? I ain't doing shit, man. What are we doing? This is probably the least creative I've been, in my entire life. I feel like it sort of happened. I don't know. In some ways, I think I was hustling and doing a bunch of stuff. And then I kind of just reached a point where I was like, none of this is really paying. You know what I mean? I think I hit some adult reality blues of it all, of just like, oh, right. And the gig I had that was paying kind of went sideways. And so I had to do put some adult pants on and do some adulting, where you just work for money and things. And it's not very creative.
That is that is the perpetual struggle of an artist for sure.
So it's been fun. I mean, I'm not mad. I'm not bitter. I'm enjoying life. I'm enjoying the little bit more downtime, and doing the podcast, I think, helps me sort of talk through just sort of general life stuff. I find it fun talking with other people and other creatives and people around my age as well. We're just gonna go, what the fuck is this all? What are we doing? You know what I mean? There's enough to piss and moan and be confused and scared about in the world in general, that I can put whatever personal blues of not being creative and providing and trying my best to provide for a family. I was like, okay, that's enough for me right now. But I do have a band that we meet about once a week. And I started off as a solo band, and we've transitioned it into this kind of like, we should all write. We should all sort of contribute to this thing. So it was called the Randy Randall Ensemble for about a year, and it was really fun, but I didn't really want to be a band leader. I wanted to be more of a band member. So we're comprised of other parents, and so we're all kind of play, and then take a month off because we got kids stuff and it's soccer season and there's things to do and graduations and things you have to show up for. And then we're like, okay, well, let's get back and let's rewrite that same song for another 2 months. And so it's fun. It's good. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun doing it. I think we're actually going to record this weekend. Look at the 2 songs we've been focusing on. But in terms of a commercial sort of, major creative project, it's the right size for what I can accomplish, what I can contribute to at this point. So it's fun. It's good. I like having an outlet. And then, it's funny. Then do you remember Jeff Rosenberg from Young People and Pink and Brown? Yeah. He's had been sending me songs for a while, and we talked about producing or recording them, doing something. And then he wanted me to put a band together. I was like, Jeff, I think you should put the band together. But he's only in Southern California two out of the 7 days a week. So there's a lot of little things like that. So I'm kind of putting it on him to sort of get but we've had a few practices and a few jams, and it's been really fun and exciting. I love Jeff and his music and everything he's done. I like how he thinks about music and how he puts it together. So that'd be fun if that continues to, but at the pace that it runs at this age, I think it will be about 15 to 20 years before something happens, and it'll be fun.
You never really know. Like, I know now that I'm like 45 years old and I look back and I'm like, there were times in my life where there was probably 4 years in my 30s where I was just so uncreative, up to the point where I thought, well, maybe I'm just done.
Mm.
And then it turned out not to be true. Like it just came back with a vengeance, like my creative passion. And I'm starting to realize that is kind of a thing that happens, that it comes in waves. And when I look back, there was actually a period in my 20s where I wasn't very creative at all.
Mm.
And like, it was shorter. It was only a year and a half. It wasn't 4 years or whatever. So I think that like, and the interesting thing that I've observed about these kind of waves of productivity and creativity, or whatever the hell you want to call it, is that each one has a very different flavor to it. Like now, I don't know how much you talk about openly about your sobriety on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm pretty open. Yeah.
But like approaching a music project with a sober brain, it's not like, okay, now we're all clean and sober and we're working. No, now, at least for me, I'm able to like tap in to all of these emotions that I know how to recognize. Like I know the complexities of the things that I feel. And that's kind of like that's a creative reservoir in a way, I think.
Mm.
And even as my approach to being creative becomes more intellectual in a way. I don't mean intellectual in that I'm into the technical aspects of it. I mean, it's more of a thing that I'm using more of my brain. When we were younger, you make music, it's like, this is a song, blah, like here it is, like outpouring of emotion. And I think now it's more of like well, what is this doing? How is somebody else hearing this? Like, why exactly am I doing it? All these kind of maybe existential questions that you're asking. I feel like those, at least in my experience, start to enrich the experience of doing these projects. So like, yeah, I don't know if just because you're not doing anything super creative right now, it's probably just on the horizon, probably just going to come right back.
Yeah. No, I feel like I've never really stopped. I mean, I guess I was thinking about this. I was like, I'm being dramatic. I was like, I still play solo shows and I have a few other kind of ongoing recording projects, and I'm always working on things and tinkering and here and there and the other way. And I just produced this band. We recorded last year, but it's just coming out now on Matador, called Lifeguard, and it's a great record.
So you got tons of stuff going.
I guess it's going. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, I love a good pity party as much as the next guy. No, I'm not playing. Well, more likely what it is I'm not playing 5 nights a week and practicing and writing.
Well, none
40
of us
hours
are
a
doing
week.
that.
You know what I mean?
Only Matt Kronk is doing that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a spattering of a lot of laundry and cooking dinner and driving kids around. So, which is great. I enjoy that, but I don't have that. Yeah.
I have to work on a lot of bad movies. I worked on I wrote music for the Hellraiser reboot, which was kind of fun.
Ooh.
But
yeah. Where did that come out? There was like a woman, right?
It was a year. It was about a year ago that it came out. I mean, it was really fun to just do a movie. I remember from being a kid, like to do that again and be a composer on that project. I wasn't the main composer, but I did the opening music for it.
I saw the third Venom movie, and I saw Dan Deacon did music for the third Venom movie with Tom Hardy. The comic book character Venom. I don't know what he did though. It was hard to know what it was. But he was credited, unless there's somebody else named Dan Deacon doing music for comic book movies. I could see Dan.
I wouldn't be. Dan Deacon would probably be very good at that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was one of those interesting ones. I was like taking the kids, to a matinee, and we had the 3D glasses on, the popcorn. And I'm like, wait, Dan? And I almost wanted to reach out, but I was also like, he's busy. He's doing something. He doesn't need to hear from me.
Yeah.
But that's fun. Yeah. It's exciting.
Do you, how does, I'm curious, I don't know when you need to wrap this up, probably pretty soon.
Oh, yeah. We could wrap whenever you want to.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, like, how does the current, like, shit that the world is in right now and like how we deal with, like, I'm just curious how it like manifests in the art that you make. Is it in the forefront, or is it something that drives you, or is it something that you try to? Is the music an escape in a way, a diversion, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have a particular answer for it. You know what I mean? Sorry.
Let me just add one more question. One more thing is that often when I think about making music these days, that intellectual part of my brain kicks in, and I'm like, well, why am I wanting to make this really?
Mm.
And I think the most important thing on me is like the fact that, Gaza has been leveled, and, ICE agents and Marines in LA. And like, these are things that I'm like, these are the things that we really need to deal with. And it seems like important for me in anything that I expressed to incorporate that. And yet I also believe in art for art's sake. The sort of Oscar Wilde idea of like, all art is useless. I'm just curious how that shows up in your life.
I mean, to be honest, I don't think I have a particular contemporary reactionary process in the creative, space. I've come to realize, over the decades that I want to play guitar like I want to breathe or have sex. It's this kind of feeling of like, it's such a personal sort of thing where it's like, I'm driven to do it outside of my own biological or psychological or emotional sort of state of just surviving. I find myself playing music or putting melodies or doing, mostly it's playing guitar. Like I just pick up a guitar and because it's the same as going to the bathroom in the same sort of way. We're like, this just feels right. My brain is
That's
now
awesome.
Instantly leveled in a way that it was, if I was disagitated before, now I'm suddenly in a better place. And so it's so like disgustingly personal in my relationship to playing guitar or making sounds or doing those kind of things that I feel almost inferior or callous that I don't have that kind of larger sort of thing. It's like, I can't eat this burrito because some fucked up shit going on. It's like, I gotta eat the burrito. I don't know. I'm gonna read more about it, but then even, but there's a larger feeling of like, what can I do at all? But yeah, no, I don't think I have that part of my brain with my creativity.
I think for me, a lot of it probably comes from the fact that I have clients that rely on me to produce certain things. And so therefore my relationship, like when my entire life has been about music and a kind of a unique way, I think that it's like, sometimes I think, well, music for me, asking me what my favorite music is a really tough question, because it's like, well, that's like asking me what my favorite food is. It's
changes.
Like, it doesn't just change. It's like the difference between EDM and background music for a TV commercial. Like, I mean, like they're both
situational.
Music.
Yeah,
they're both music. They're both
for it. I see.
And I live in both those worlds. And in fact, there's hundreds of them. So for me, like, I guess for me, what is the, I have to ask the question, what is the burrito? What is my burrito music?
Yeah. Just the thing that would come out of you because you couldn't help it. Right. Yeah. No, and I only have that mostly. I've tried my best to perform music on demand or do sound alikes or things that sound like things or meet reference tracks and things. And I'm just like, I don't know. Hard. That's pretty. I'm probably about 7% of the way there. The rest of it just sounds like me, for better or worse. Yeah. And I've kind of taken solace in that. Like, well, some could call that a failure, or some could call that a style.
Yeah.
I'm locked into a style that is for better or worse, whatever it is that I sound like.
Well, you're just an artist. That's what comes out of you.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, I like the idea. I would like to think I've grown or changed or have stretched, but you know what I mean? It's like, oh geez, who's to know? You know what I mean? I think that's the other hard part of it. Like the reception of the art or reception of music or any of that kind of stuff is always like, has so little to do with the making of the music. You know what I mean? I've never read a review or seen anybody that's ever really like, been able to sway me in one way or another on how I would make something based on a review. Even if it's a good review or a bad review, it's just like, that's fine. I'm going to still make something that I think sounds like this, that, or the other thing. Like I can't really, you know what I mean? I can't really respond to it. I don't think I have the skill set or the talent to do that. To even be offended by the thing. Cause it's just like, cool. You didn't like it. That's fine. There's a lot of music I don't like. It's nice of you. It's nice of you to write about it and tell us we look like Madonna music video extras or something. Wire magazine, 2007. I appreciate that, but you didn't. That's funny. You didn't have to make fun of our clothes, but that's cool. You guys are.
Oh my god.
You guys.
Well, I'll never forget our first Pitchfork review was It's pretty terrible. I think it said the guitarist uses acrobatics to mask an inability to play. I was like, wow,
Oh,
okay.
That's a t-shirt right there. That's a t-shirt.
I was like, I guess I'm an acrobat. I'm not a musician.
Musical acrobats or physical acrobats? Like,
I don't know.
He could tell you were jumping around too much on the record.
I don't know.
Or maybe they'd seen a show and got their foot stepped on.
Maybe.
Yeah, I celebrate the death of that world. I think in some ways, even though we profited and benefited from the world of blog, the blogosphere of Pitchfork and et al.
I wonder if it's actually
but it doesn't
done.
really matter. It feels like it. I mean, or in the sense that of the way it like held this sort of like magical wand over our generation of bands. I feel like there was a thing like if you got a good score, you would suddenly get, you know, shows or you'd get a record deal or you get a thing. You know, these scores seem to like matter to people in a kind of like statistical way that I don't think wasn't good for art. It wasn't good for creativity. It wasn't good for music.
Definitely scores are bad in any regard. But I kind of wonder, like now we have like, you know, music influencers who like talk about new artists. And I'm like, is that just the new version of Pitchfork or whatever? And I think the big difference is that for us, our bubble was sizable, but it was hard for us to see it. And now the bubbles are very easy to see. Like there's a certain section of YouTube that's all about music reviews, and that's it.
See.
The rest of the people, you know, doing home renovations and things like that, you know, like, now like it's totally possible to like live in a world where you don't even realize that people are reviewing records and be in a band too at the same time. You know, it's like,
well, that's the bigger question too. Like, what does it even mean? Like, music is so monetarily devalued in that there's no sales in, you know, in music world in that kind of way. And even live music is, you know what I mean?
God.
Like whatever, been fractionalized in so many other ways. It just, there's a feeling of this sort of like, you know, I was even joking about this band it's still untitled, you know, where we're going to go record 2 songs and like, what's the best case scenario for this? Like, I'm happy to play this. I love playing these songs. I love jamming. I love getting this thing together and I'm happy to record, but best case scenario, like 1 million people listen to this for free. We're exactly the same as we are, whether or not like, or worst case scenario, 1 person listens to it for free. Well, the difference to me personally of 1 person or 1 million people listening to music for free, and not that I'm in it for the money, but it just, you know what I mean? The way my life would be different of those 2 outcomes is like 0.0%. So I'm like, this is fun. Let's do this because we like to do this. I will waste all my time and all my money making my weird art because I love doing it and I can't live without doing this. But I have no feelings of like there ever being any financial, social, or anything else outside of my own like brain, my own masturbatory excitement of like, we up for a song, we look at this, we.
That's probably the best way to approach it. I have so many like weird, confusing, conflicting. As a person who gets paid to make music and sound, and like so, like for me, that's my livelihood, and at the same time, I'm kind of like, maybe music should be free. Like, I mean, like the big problem with it today is that somebody is profiting off of the stuff that we are making.
Yeah, free is in large quotes.
That is the very, very shitty thing that's happening.
Exploitation.
But like, you know, the music, especially recorded music, is still relatively young in the course of humanity, you know, like this idea that we have music that you can own and record. And I wonder if like that started us on a really unnatural path in a way.
Yeah. But I feel like it's in the same way that like cars are young. There's still like cars are still a billions of dollar industry. You know what I mean? Like music, it'd be a thing like something like, you know, all cars should be free. And maybe that's part of a thing. You're like, oh yeah, maybe all cars should be free.
But
right, I don't
a
know
car is a thing that exists. Intellectual property is, I think, a little bit different. And I'm
even like, but a record exists. You know what I mean? Like the music that was recorded, you know, does exist. But yeah, I know what you mean.
I guess I'm thinking of like what were some of the original purposes of music tens of thousands of years ago? Spirituality. Maybe religion, maybe entertainment, maybe music has always been entertainment. So if that's the case, the value is in the people who experience it. And that is what the value is. The value isn't, and so we kind of put a value on it in the 20th century in a way that we had never really done before. Maybe in Western music, they had in Western Europe in Europe, they had done it in post Renaissance or whatever, kind of placing these kind of like entertainment value on music that was high class or whatever.
But I mean, that's such a larger straw man sort of theory where it's like water should be free under that, clean air should be free. Like we shouldn't have to, there should be, we're looking at man's natural rights or like this natural state of like a caveman sort of archaeology to now today's social structures. And you know what I mean? We can't help but be where we're from and where we're at in time and to apply or to expect or demand, I guess I'm not, or you know what I mean? These things. I was like, no, we're being ripped off. Like the fucking arts got fucked so hard and has been defunded and has become a shell game. And maybe it always was a shell game. Maybe it always was this like money laundering, fucked up, thing that has always existed. But there was a brief shiny moment where independent record labels, from the late 80s through the mid aughts, where you could be a person and make a record and own a record label and you could sell 1,000 of them and somehow it worked. And again, I'm old man shaking my fist at the cloud, but I know that was part of my narrative story. There was a moment like there was a physical record store and there was a physical bookstore and you could make records and books and sell them for $15 and it was great. Exactly. But that was my blip. That's where I lived. I can't deny my blipness, you know what I mean? Because like, then that same sort of way, like my blip's different than someone else's blip, but that's what I went, that's where my personality and values and morals were sort of all like created in that blip for me, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'll miss those moments. And
I'm not like arguing that music should be free. It's more like the industry that we built around it. It seems like a kind of a weird thing to do, especially when,
yeah. Well, I think the larger music thing was always an exploitation process. It was always gangsters and it was always the thing, ripping people off and everything. It's always was that bad. Like I'm saying is out of that horrible cesspool of record industry sleazeballs, there was a reactionary period in the 80s and 90s of independent punk, sort of music that had
reactionary,
slightly better moral or slightly better, I mean, again, there were still horrible people in that world too. I mean, it was part of the same ecosystem of that, of owning and selling masters and whatever things, but it's still there was a moment. That's why I shot my shot when I had my chance and put all my eggs in that cart, and to see that cart just go so suddenly vanish, like fuck. Okay,
so I'm kind of resigned to that. Like I'm probably not, any music that I make as an artist is probably not gonna be valued in the same way as that era. But oftentimes I think about like, well, if we were to like get rid of the exploitation of it, how would music be distributed? A lot of the problem has to do with everything is kind of global and everybody can access everything now. So like there's obviously value to that. I mean, before you actually had to go find that record and play it,
Sure. Yeah. There was gatekeeping. There was, there was the whole thing of like who had the cool records and who didn't have the cool records and who was allowed to hear the cool records. Yeah.
I mean, the solution to the problem probably most likely lies in a change in the culture of how we appreciate and want to support artists, really. I mean,
I think the best way to do it is to get like dick pills to sponsor, YouTube videos and have to like sit through like, sciatica, like medications, and then you get to hear your song and then you get to listen to more ads and 30-second mid-roll things. I think that's probably the best way to experience art in my opinion.
The advertisements really creeped into everything, didn't they? I mean, they just like,
speaking of which, this episode's brought to you by DistroKid. I think they're still paying me money.
I know.
Fuckers won't let them unionize.
I mean,
I'm sure no one from DistroKid's listening by this point. Go fuck yourself, DistroKid.
I
let these people unionize. Pay your employees. Don't be assholes.
I basically work in advertising, so like I know it's an evil. It's a necessary thing that we got to deal with. Yeah. But I just, it's funny. Like I was on a plane flight 2 days ago, and like I couldn't do anything on the plane without seeing a freaking Superman ad. Like it was just crazy. It was like,
well, but that's going to be good. That's good content right there. I mean, that's plain old USA Americana jingoism right there. That's going to work. That's going to fix the world. Come on.
It's so weird. Where are the next advertisements? I remember, I think it was in like 1998 when I saw that you could buy discounted CDRs, but they had advertisements on them. I'm like, oh shit, a new way to advertise things.
That'll work.
Where are they coming next?
Well, I remember when like Sonic Youth sold a CD at Starbucks, and it felt like that was, the sky had caught fire. Like, how could this happen? How could you possibly buy a Sonic Youth record while we're in a place where you bought shitty burnt coffee? Like, it's impossible. How could this happen? And it just feels so quaint to remember any kind of outrage about, you know what I mean? It just feels so long ago, and so many moons ago, and different, different values were represented.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is. I'm not, again, like you say, you can't fix it all, but I'll always cherish those things. I think that's my one thought is like, I'll lionize my moment, that where I grew up, just like I would expect anybody else from any other generation to do the same, and hopefully not see it through rose colored glasses, or sugarcoat it. But at the same time, it's like, you got to speak your truth in your time. Like this is where my North Star was. This is what I shot to. And then by the time I got close enough to the North Star, it had disappeared. I found out that it had already exploded. Yeah. There's my new sci-fi movie. I'll pitch that to Disney Plus.
I haven't played music in LA in a while, so I don't really know if things are the same or have changed. But the Bay Area is kind of weird because there are weird opportunities for music and musician that I never noticed in LA. Like, for instance, like playing
piano at the Google lobby for everybody.
Like kind of stuff. Like, I mean, well, no, but like just opportunity. Like, well, I guess that's a
jam session at the Google or at the Pixar cafeteria. You can put together a jam session with Berkeley
Well, here's
College
an
grads.
example. Like my wife works for a nonprofit organization, and they often have these get-togethers, and there's often some music component to it. And like, there is an opportunity for hundreds of people to hear your music and love it. And even if they don't love the music, they'll stand around going, oh, this is kind of interesting. There's a lot of that in the Bay Area. And I don't know if that exists in LA.
I don't know.
It's not the same as playing a show at the Smell, but it is a place where people are appreciating live music and they're appreciating music, which I think is cool. I think we need more of that in general.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think from what I can tell is kids are having house shows again.
Yes, they are. I have students that play house shows. Yeah. That is kind of cool.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a great vibe and that's a great feeling, Yeah. I just think, there's so many horrible things though, just within the community, like Ghost Ship and all of these other things, you know what I mean? Where it's like, you just want people to be safe. You just want people to
Ghost Ship
comfortable. You know what I mean? Again, like all of those things.
Ghost Ship in a few years.
It hurts. It still hurts. You know what I mean? Those of all the contemporary things I think that impacted us and our scene and our lives. You know what I mean? I think that was the one where just unfathomable. Unfathomable.
As the billionaires leave the Bay Area, I do notice that there are more house shows and warehouse shows starting to come back, and there are more artists starting to get more courageous. So,
yeah, well,
maybe there is some hope.
Yeah,
maybe we can end on that. End on this hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Yes, man. What a great show. I wonder if Donald Trump. Do you think Donald Trump watched Andor?
No, I was wondering if George Lucas watched Andor. That's what I wanted to know. I know Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about anything. He watches Fox News 24/7 while he has flatulent diarrhea. But but no, I was wondering if George Lucas watched it, or if he has a synopsis or somebody go through, pull the highlights.
I just thought it was crazy that like the shit that was going on in LA was just so clearly intentionally designed to create an altercation where they could shoot at civilians.
Yeah.
Like
the Gorman massacre was real.
They're trying to make the Gorman massacre. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've talked about it a little bit here on the podcast, but I mean, I did this free music program that I do every year and in Paramount, and we did it on a Monday. And then all the stuff happened on a Wednesday. I have a small child coming down my background. I don't know if you're seeing this. I'm being spied upon.
Small child?
My ISB spy.
Hello there.
Spying. All right. That's probably my sign to wrap it up. I think they're back from soccer camp. Great catching up. I'm glad we got to talk.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks so much. It's great to talk to you. And the album comes out June 27th.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Stop. Awesome. Wow. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really got into it. It's fun. I think we haven't gone over an hour in a while. It was fun. Do a real long one there. everybody, go listen to Hlll YH. The record is out streaming now. And then go see them. There'll be in LA, if you are in LA, on 8/8. So August 8th at Permanent Records and August 9th at The Smell, two of my favorite venues in Los Angeles. Thanks, Jeff, for coming on. Pleasure catching up. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I will see you on Monday with Aaron Farley for the halftime show. And don't forget, check out Fog Lamp. That's Fog Lamp Bay on the Instagrams. Standing on the Wing was the song that sounded awesome. Thank you, Fog Lamp. Send more stuff. I'm at Randy S. Randall on Instagram, and you can email me, hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com. Tell your friends. Let everybody know it's cool. It's a fun hang here on the Hyphenate Pod. All right. Have a good weekend. Hope everyone's enjoying the summer. Fuck ice. And we'll see you on Monday. Bye.
And my brother was like, Jeff, come back to LA. We'll start a band with Ezra. You can live in my closet.